GM. GM. Good fucking morning. What an excellent morning to be a bull, not a filthy bear. What a good morning to be a bull in a bull market. Almost like that's all you need to do. So, the higher this goes, the more bullish it is, not the more bearish. Bears are now resorting to coping. It's torn through every logical resistance, and this to me is setting up for a breakout. It might just go straight there. It is pretty much one way up, and I would expect some kind of pullback from there. But the shorts on Bybit, Binance, and OKX have just been getting absolutely crushed. And if we look across the funding rates, we look at OI Global, funding rate global, part of our regular morning analysis. A sneak preview of what I have in bull market workflow lesson coming very soon. Maybe even today, hopefully today. Next few days I'm just going to be... These past few days I've been very heavily trading on lower time frames. Been managing a couple of scalp and day trade positions. Now I've got myself positioned nicely. And I just want to let the market do its thing. I think the tendency you'll have here is to think that the market is too high and needs to pull back. And obviously, that's likely, right? I don't think that we're going to go straight up and break out and go to new highs and stay there. I would think that if it did push all the way, and this is make no mistake, this is an aggressive squeeze. And if anyone tries to short, this is the thing. Shorts are going to keep shorting. Because when people are wrong, they just can't admit it. And it's one of the hardest things for traders to admit, and it's what loses more money than anything. If you were shorting and your invalidation was 45 and then you get stopped out, guess what? When price drops back down, you're like, oh, I was right, I was just too early. Then you start shorting again, and then you just get fucking wrecked. That's why, so often, you have the first sell-off, and then you have the spike, right? In every, whether it's a top or even just a reaccumulation, you have the first top here. People shorted this. I remember, I was laughing. People were shorting this. Shorted, and shorted here, and shorted here, and shorted here, and shorted. Oh, that's it. 35 rejected, down we go to 30, and it just blasts them out. Then they short again, blast them out. Then they short again, blast them out. Same thing's going to happen here. It's a bull market. So, what you need to be careful of as a trader is purely your long exposure, anything to do with leverage. If you're just buying spot and holding, and then adding your long trades at breakouts, retests, accumulations, not like adding them here. This is obviously not a good place to add along. You will play the bull market better than 90% of people. If you just don't fucking short, you will outperform 90% of people in the next year and a half. Because there's zero upside to shorting. You're shorting against the trend. And you can't make 100x on a short. You can't make 5x. You can't make 10x. You can on longs. Put all that mental energy into longs. And so this move has basically gone pretty much exactly as expected from all the way down here, where after this breakout I said upward sloping accumulation, and we got exactly that. And then we broke out higher and we talked about the pivots. 34.9 acted as a great pivot, 40.8 acted as a perfect pivot, and 48 acted as the top. On the day of the ETF, said that's probably a top. At the bottom, which was the Tuesday, talked about how there's a turnaround Tuesday that happens in Wall Street, reversals, got long. So every single part of this move, I personally have played really well. And that's not to pat myself on the back. That is actually a reminder to be humble. Because in the past I've done this and I felt really smug. And I've ended up taking my eye off the ball and losing money in previous cycles. So right now, I'm resisting any temptation to try and tell the market where to go. The tendency, and at least how I would have been before, is to look at this and say, oh, 4 big green candles going up into resistance, time to de-risk or get short or fade it. No. To me, this is a sign of extreme strength. Now, it doesn't mean that you just automatically go long here, right? That's not the play. But I think simple levels are going to work best on this. So where we've just broken out from, this consolidation is obviously the must hold level now. And 45k had been the pretty solid resistance point. So 44.7, we got above it, back below it, above it, back below it, touched it there, hit it here. So pullbacks can come for sure. But to me, this is actually falling within a perfect time frame to just grind higher into a breakout. And it's actually looking at, it reminds me a little bit of the 2021 move, which isn't on this fucking chart because it doesn't go back far enough. It actually reminds me a bit of this move, where it was 31 days, and if you remember, I think it was weekly outlook or monthly preview, I talked about this. If the breakout, if there's going to be a 50k move above all that, it's probably going to happen in the first half of the month. That's very common for Bitcoin to do its directional move in the first half of the month because of options. After the first half of the month, it's harder for BTC to continue rallying. It can, if there's momentum, but generally it does most of its move at the beginning of the month, like you even see here, 1st of January. Rallies all the way up until the 8th, then consolidates and goes sideways till the end of the month. Start of the next month, goes up. It's very somewhat predictable. You can't predict the direction, but you can say that Bitcoin tends to move most at the beginning of the month if it's going to move. So what I was looking at here is you have to break down these areas and remember how people were, because I traded all the way through this obviously, and remember how people were approaching this. So bears were absolutely euphoric here. I remember it well. This was the lower high, right? That was the complacency bounce. They're saying you're an idiot. Now it's going down, it's going to zero. They were short, they were adding to their shorts. Every bounce up, there's another opportunity to add to your shorts. Look at this, you're an absolute idiot if you're long. Then the spike up happens and they say, oh, that was just a short squeeze, still going down. And then it starts to kind of grind higher. And at this point here, which I think is a bit like what we're doing now, this is where people try to fade. But the actual move is already set. We're breaking out. And I talked about this in the monthly preview, and it's one of my main sort of, you could call it a prediction, but to me it's obvious. There's going to be big buyers that are announcing they've bought Bitcoin. And it's going to be after a dip. So back in 21, that was when Tesla announced. Tesla announced they bought Bitcoin here, and that's what caused that next pump. But they had been buying in this dip. This dip to me looks very, very similar. The price action is not identical. The timing is everything. We're 29 days now, so we're getting up to that 30-day mark. We're still in the first half of the month. And I wouldn't be surprised if you hear about some big buyer who's gotten into Bitcoin and is now coming out to support it. And then you start, we're getting close to just 2 months away from the halving. And then there's very little reason for people to sell. To me, and I'm not always right, for sure I'm not always right, but to me, bears have had their chance. That was it. We took out the lows, came back, and it's up again. It doesn't mean, as I said, up only. If there's too many leverage longs getting long in here, we'll absolutely flush them out. Right? You might have to go for more consolidation. There won't be free rides necessarily. The free ride was getting long near the bottom and riding it up, and you've probably had a free ride all the way to here. Less likely to be so as we go higher. But Whether it breaks out now or breaks out later or whatever, I think this move, the strength of this move, confirms to me that the bottom's in, and that we don't go lower than that 38 level. It doesn't mean we can't swing back around again for another retest, which I also think is unlikely, because you have to remember the market doesn't have to do anything that you say or that you want it to do. And the simplest way to play a bull, and this is what I fucked up when I was newer at trading, it's a bull market. It should go up, right? So in a bull market, it doesn't need a reason to go up, because it's a bull market. If it's below all-time high and it's a bull market, the reason it's going up is because it should be here. That's it. And that's how traders and investors think. In a bullish market, it will trend towards the all-time high. There needs to be really valid reasons for it to go down, not up. So for it to sell off, there needs to be reasons. And those reasons are usually like ETF, sell the news, some people exiting, right? People closing their trades from the ETF rally. And then if you have major bearish catalysts, like the Fed raises rates instead of cutting them, which doesn't seem likely, or global liquidity really worsens, which it's doing the opposite, it's getting stronger, or stablecoin flows into crypto go negative, which they're not, they're still positive and have been up only for several weeks, and they're still not at the previous peak, so there's plenty of sideline capital to come back in. Those are all the things that matter more. And so the default in a bull market is that we're bullish and that we go up. At the same time, you have to be mindful that we can easily flush here, right? Any of these late longers, we could go sideways for a bit, big wick down, and then away it goes. So you have to separate the trading from the holding. We can also, which is not out of the question, we can also go down all the way back to 40 and set a trap and then go from there. Sort of a double bottom, or just fill the gap or whatever. Don't think that is likely. I think the strength of this move has said otherwise, and I think that the people who didn't, we did, thankfully. We bought more here, bought AKT, bought Ethereum, then swapped the Ethereum into Bitcoin. That was the chance to load up on some spot, because you just buy spot when other people are bearish. You buy when it doesn't feel like it, in a bull market after a correction. You don't have to wait for 30-40% corrections, because that's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin doesn't do that. Bitcoin used to do that, but now it's less volatile because there's more players in it and all the billions from TradFi. And while it can go down, and at some point I'm sure it will go down, I don't think that the conditions are there right now. The conditions for me are just to the upside, because the higher Bitcoin goes, the more attractive it becomes to TradFi. And now you've got this marketing machine pushing Bitcoin, but also any TradFi buyers who bought the ETFs on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or even Friday of last week, 2 weeks ago. Anyone who was buying, and there was billions of dollars of volume, right? And probably a billion, maybe a half a billion of inflows net. So a lot of ETF buyers, people brand new to Bitcoin, have bought Bitcoin down here. And these are TradFi, used to seeing 10% a year is good returns. And already they're up 17% in 2 weeks. This is the best way to orange pill them. They now love Bitcoin. Anyone who even bought the top at the hype is already back to break even. And they're like, okay, got a little bit of an introduction into the volatility of Bitcoin, but that it bounces back, it's strong, it's resilient, and it fucking should be much, much higher, because that's the way it's programmed to go higher, as long as they keep debasing the currency. So this is a tricky part in terms of trading, right? Because without sounding like I'm on the fence, which I try to never do, but you have to consider multiple paths, we can easily just leave everyone in the dust and break out and make our move up into the most important range, which is kind of this 50 to all-time high level, right? That's like the true pre all-time high consolidation range, which I would expect we spend a bit of time in, and then we have a breakout. We're not there yet. We're on the way there. And as you're on the way there, you have to also look at and consider it can easily go sideways for a few weeks. It can go down. It could come all the way down, all the way up, break out. It could just go sideways for a little bit, break out. It could take the high, fall back, break out. Like, there's loads and loads of ways it goes, which is why spot is so important. Like, the core of your portfolio being in spot is so important. Trying to time it is really, really tricky. Trying to time it is what we do with trades. And we do those trades on top of our spot holdings. But that core of spot is important. And so I still have some cash on the sidelines, a little bit. If you remember back at the start of the year, I said I wasn't going to put any new money into the market. So this was like January. My 2024 plan, which you can go and you can watch it, it's on the Learning Center. I said my plan is don't put any new money in. So any profits I make, any income I get, don't put it in yet. I'm fully invested already. I've got Bitcoin, a cash. I had some Solana and Ethereum at that time. That's all fully in. That's not changing. Don't put any new spot in yet until we see a dip. We got the dip. I started to put some in. I put 25% of my spare capital back into AKT. Loaded up an AKT at 240. Into ETH. Got ETH at 2200 or something like that. And so I do still have some cash on the sidelines that I want to get in. And as much as I think we can just keep going from here, I'll just wait until there is some kind of correction. I'm happy to buy higher if it's at a level that has shown confirmation. Meaning, I'd be happy to see us break above here, fall back inside, and then break above and close. Right? If it done this, if it took the highs out, fell back, and came back up, and we had a weekly close above 48, 49.50, I'd just buy there. Not even there, I'd just buy there. Into Bitcoin or whatever else. Because I'm waiting for confirmation. Maybe we could buy this dip, sure. I would absolutely buy 40k if we got it. But I have the luxury of that because the majority of my money is already in and has been in because, you know, if you've been around here, we've been buying since the end of 2022, all of 2023. And that's the point of sticking around during the bear market. You get most of your money in. And then the last thing I'll say on this daily levels is it might not feel like it. The FOMO will start to kick up, but you do still have time. When you look at total market cap, right, it looks great. It's pushing up. It's really strong. It came back. It held the bands. We're in a strong weekly uptrend. But we're still significantly below the all-time high. And so we're still in recovery year, right? Recovery year is where you get back all those lost gains from 2022. And then, especially if the expectation is that we have a big new bull market and Bitcoin goes above 100k and the AI bubble blows up and let's say we grow to 5 trillion, right? There's still so much ahead of us that you don't want to make rash decisions over low time frames. Stick to your plan, stick to your ideas. If you want to trade based on some kind of confirmation, then take it. 2024 is not guaranteed to be up only bull market, right? 2024, if it plays like 2020 did, which is over here, this is 2020, right? From January and all the way to December. So there's roughly. So most of 2020 until really October, most of 2020 was up, down, up, grinding, but then it really started accelerating later in the year. This year so far, we've actually just been sideways. There's January. We've just gone sideways. So, and we're still only in early February. The feeling of FOMO is a very strong one. You have to have a plan and a process. You have to understand that if you're confident that whatever coin you're in is going to go higher in whatever time frame you're looking at, then get in spot. Meaning, if you think Bitcoin's going to go to 100k and it's now at 46, and you're willing to hold through drawdown, but it's spot, so you won't get liquidated, then the upside is 100. The downside is what? Downside is being completely wrong and maybe it goes to 30k, which I don't think it'll do from here, but it could. Anything can happen. And then the aspect of FOMO is like, it's always important to look back to. So when we had our big rally up in January and we came down into this low here and we reversed, we pushed up, came back, up, back, and we retested a couple of times. We've had a big rally, we've sold off, we've had a very similar reversal, we're impulsing off it. Is it possible the Bitcoin goes up, then down, then up, then down, then away again? Yes. And is it possible that, the whole market, this is total, but same for Bitcoin. And is it possible that we actually see opportunities to reaccumulate at higher prices later on? Absolutely. I don't think so. I don't think it will do that because it won't repeat the exact same pattern. But is it possible that it comes back? For sure. And there's no easy answer for this because this is the question everyone asks. But how do I know? How do I know which is the most probable, which one to take, which one to do? Well, that's the whole game. And that's why you need to set your plans ahead of time. And everyone who's been here for more than 2 months should already have these plans because I've talked about them. If you're brand new, I understand. You might not have these plans. But your plans need to be based around very simple. If there's a correction, I will buy it because it's a bull market. And we had that correction. You can't get greedy when Bitcoin goes down 22% and say, I want it to go down 30%. You're supposed to be buying a correction, right? The goal is just don't buy the top of whatever pump it is. Don't buy when it's literally going up only. And when you get that bit of fear and the daily bands flip red and there's multiple red days, you get some spot. As for now, we could be going for a brand new trend. We could be going to pull back. If you don't know which it is, split your orders. If you're like, I think there's equal chance we go up from here versus pull back. So if you're like 50% chance we break out, 50% chance we come back for another dip, then 50-50 your orders. Right, I'm going to buy some here and leave some in whichever coin it is. And remember that the real FOMO, the real flows of capital, all of that comes at or after all-time highs. You are still early. It doesn't feel like it if you're too involved. But in a really simple sense, if Bitcoin doesn't go to all-time high and if the total cap doesn't reach all-time high again, it'd be a pretty disappointing bull market, which can happen. This might be maybe we get to 2 trillion and that's it. Who knows? But if you're saying, my bet is we go to 3 trillion, then you're still early by that measure. Right? Doesn't mean you'd be 100% right, but that's the bet. And that's how I would view it. So, that's it. Bit of an overview. Really not a lot to really say, other than I think Bitcoin keeps going up and grinding up, and the ETF flows plus the short squeeze plus the spot bid is really strong. And I would favor 50k before 40k at this point. But again, when it gets to 50k, who knows? It doesn't mean that 50k then leads to 60k. You have to just balance probabilities and split your orders based upon what you think is the most likely outcome. So, that's it. GM.